Welcome to all final year MCOM students to the online class on risk and insurance management subject. Well, my dear students, in the last class we were discussing about the general elements of insurance contract, and in the today's class we have completed the general elements of insurance contract in last class. In today's class, we will complete the elements of special contract relating to insurance. What are the elements which are required for the special contract relating to insurance? Okay, I'll share you my PPT. Well, can you see my PPT? Is it visible? Fine. The part A we have studied, that is the general elements. Okay. The part B is the elements of special contract relating to insurance. Number one is insurable interest. Number one is insurable interest. For an insurance contract or for an insurance contract to be valid, the insured must possess an insurable interest in the subject matter of insurance. The insurable interest is the interest whereby the policyholder is benefited by the existence of the subject matter and is prejudiced death or damage of the subject matter. I'll repeat, existence of the subject matter and is prejudiced death or damage of the subject matter. The essentials of a valid insurable interest consisting of: number one is there must be a subject matter to be insured. Point number two, the policyholder should have monetary relationship with the subject matter. And number three, the relationship between the policyholder and the subject matter should be recognized by law. In other words, there should not be any illegal relationship between the policyholder and the subject matter to be insured. And the last one is the financial relationship between the policyholder and the subject matter should be such that the policyholder is economically benefited by the survival or existence of the subject matter and or will suffer economic loss at the death or existence of the subject matter. The subject matter, is related to, our subject matter is life in the life insurance. The subject matter is life in the life insurance, property and goods in property insurance, liability and adventure in general insurance. The insurable interest is essentially a interest, that is the loss caused by fire happening of the insured risk must be capable of a financial valuation. Here, no emotional or sentimental loss. As an exception, absolutely there is no exception here. Okay, no emotional or no sentimental loss or an anxiety. So would be the ground of insurable interest. The event insured should be one that, if it happens the party suffers financially, and if it does not happen, the party is benefited by the existence. But a mere hope or expectation which may be frustrated by happening of some extent is not an insurable interest. Then with regard to the second point, utmost good faith, the doctrine of disclosing all material facts is embodied in the important principle, that is utmost good faith, which applies to all forms of insurance. Both parties of the insurance contract must be of same mind. The technical word is consensus addendum. The same mind or consensus addendum at a time of contract. There should not be any misrepresentation, non-disclosure, or fraud concerning the material. In case of insurance contract, the legal maxim, caveat emptor, you go to the full form, caveat emptor, which means let the buyer beware. Caveat emptor, CAVEAT, caveat emptor, EMPTOR, caveat emptor, which means let the buyer beware. Is it not? So, in case of the insurance contract, the legal maxim, caveat emptor or let the buyer beware, caveat emptor or let the buyer beware, does not prevail where it is regarded, or where it is regard of the buyer to satisfy himself of the genuineness of the subject matter, and the seller is under no obligation to supply information about the policy. But in insurance contract, the seller, that is the insurer, will also have disclose all the material facts. An insurance contract is a contract of Ubram Fidei, UBERRI YAM AE FIDEI. Correct? That means Ubram Fidei, which means that is of absolute good faith. Both the parties of the contract must disclose all the material facts and fully. Then let us move on to the material facts. A material fact is one which affects the judgment or decision of both the parties in entering into the contract. Facts, no, which count materially are those which knowledge influence a party in deciding whether or not to offer or to accept such risk, and if the risk is acceptable, on what terms and conditions the risk would be accepted. So these facts, these facts have a direct, have a degree on the risk in relation to the subject insurance. So there is a relation between the degree of risk and the facts. So these facts have a direct degree of risk in relation to the subject of insurance. In case of life insurance, the material facts or factors affecting the risk will be age, residence, occupation, health, income, etc., etc. And in case of property insurance, it would be a design, owner, and situation of the property. All these will matters. So now come to the full and true disclosure. The utmost good faith says that all the material facts should be disclosed in true and true form. It means that the facts should be disclosed in that form in which they really exist, in which they really exist. There should be no concealment, misinterpretation, mistake, or fraud about the material facts. There should be no false statement and no half truth or nor silence on the material facts. So, as far as the duty of the both the parties concerned, the duty of the duty to disclose the material facts lies on both the parties, the insured as well as the insurer. Both in practice, the issued has to be more particular about the observance of this principle because it is usually in full knowledge of facts relating to the subject matter, which, despite all effective inspections of the insurer, could not be disclosed. So, certain factors need not be disclosed by the insured. So, what are the factors? What are the facts? Not factors. What are the facts? Need not be disclosed by the insured. Facts of public knowledge, facts which could be inferred from the information disclosed, facts waived by the insurer, facts governed by the conditions of the policy, all these things not required. Then come to the indemnity, principle of indemnity. You know the dictionary meaning of indemnity. Indemnity means protecting the loss. As a rule, all insurance contracts except the personal insurance are contracts of indemnity, except personal insurance, I mean life insurance. According to this principle, the insurer undertakes to put the insured in the event of loss in the same position that he occupied immediately before the happening of the event insured against in certain form of insurance. The principal indemnity is modified to apply. For example, in marine or fire insurance, sometimes certain profit margin which would have earned in absence of the event is also included in the loss. In true sense of the indemnity, the insured is not entitled to make the profit of his loss. Then what are the conditions which apply for indemnity principle? What are the conditions should be fulfilled? What are the conditions should be fulfilled in full application of principle of indemnity? There are five different, you know, principles. Number one is the insured has to prove that he will suffer loss on the insured matters at the time of happening of the event, and the loss is actually monetary loss. The amount of compensation will be the second condition is the amount of compensation will be the amount of insurance. Indemnification cannot be more than the amount insured. Indemnification cannot be more than the amount insured. Second point. And the third condition If the insured gets more amount than the actual loss, the insurer has right to get the extra amount back. And the fourth condition is, if the insured gets some amount from third party after being fully indemnified by the insurer will have right to receive the amount paid by the third party. And the last condition, the principle of indemnity does not apply to personal insurance because the amount of loss is not easily calculatable. The life insurance, you can't you can't calculate the value for the life of a person. So that is why the principal indemnity does not apply to personal insurance because amount of loss is not easily calculatable for a particular person. Now come to the next doctrine of subrogation. You know the meaning of subrogation? Subrogation, which means substitution. Subrogation means substitution. The doctrine of subrogation refers to the right of the insured to stand in the place of the insured after settlement of a claim, so far as the insured's right of recovery from an alternative source is involved. If the insured is in a position to recover the loss in full or in part from a third party due to whose negligence the loss may have been calculated, his right of recovery is abrogated to the insurer on the settlement of the claim. The insurers thereafter recover the claim from the third party. The right of subrogation may be exercised by the insurer before payment of loss. I will tell you briefly about the essentials of doctrine of subrogation. The first essential is corollary to the principle of indemnity, which means supplementary. The doctrine of subrogation is the supplementary principle of indemnity. Then subrogation is a substitution. The insurer, according to this principle, becomes entitled to all the rights of insured subject matter. According to this principle, the insurer becomes entitled to all the rights of the insured subject matter after payment because he has paid the actual loss of the property. He is substituted in place of other person who act on the right and claim of the property insured. The next essentially, essential number 3 is subrogation only up to the amount of payment. The insurer is abrogated all the rights, claims, remedies, and securities of the damaged insured property after indemnification, but he is entitled to get these benefits only to the extent of his payment. Then the last one is the subrogation may be applied before payment. If the assured got certain compensation from third party before being fully indemnified by the insurer can pay only the balance of the loss. And with regard to the personal insurance, The doctrine of subrogation does not apply to personal insurance because the doctrine of indemnity is not applicable to such insurance. Because loss, you cannot calculate the loss very easily. You can't predict the loss. There is no yardstick to measure the loss of a particular life. Okay. For example, if an insured dies due to the negligence of third party, his dependent has right to recover the amount of loss from the third party along with the policy amount. No amount of the policy would be subrogated by the insurer. Now come to the seventh point, warranties. There are certain conditions and promises in insurance contract which are called warranties. According to Marine Insurance Act, a warranty is that by which the issued undertakes that some particular thing shall or shall not be done, or that some condition shall be fulfilled, or whereby he affirms or negatives the existence of a particular state of facts. Warranties which are mentioned in the policy are called express warranties. Warranties which are mentioned in the policy are called express warranties. There are certain warranties which are not mentioned in the policy. These warranties are called implied warranties. Warranties which are answers to the questions are called affirmative warranties. The warranties fulfilling certain conditions or promise are called promissory warranties. Warranty is the very important conditions in the insurance contract which is to be fulfilled by the insured. On breach of warranty, the insured becomes free from his liability. Therefore, insured must have fulfilled the conditions and promises during the insurance contract, whether it is important or not, in connection with the risk. So next come to the point number 8, proximate cause. The rule is that immediate and not the remote cause is to be regarded. The maxim is sed causa proxima non remote spectator. I'll tell you the spelling. Sed SCD, causa CAUSA, proxima PROXIMO, non NON, remote REMOLD, spectator SPECTATURE. So the maxim is sed causa proxima non remote spectator. See the proximate cause and not the distant cause. ಇದರ ಅರ್ಥ ಇಷ್ಟೇ, see the proximate cause and not the distant cause. The rule is that immediate and not the remote cause is to be regarded. So the real cause must be seen while making the payment of the loss. If the real loss or the real cause of loss is insured, if the real cause of the loss is insured, the insurer is liable to compensate the loss. Otherwise, the insurer may not be responsible for loss. The proximate cause is not a device to avoid the trouble of discovering the real ease or the common sense cause. Proximate cause means the active efficient cause that sets in motion a train of events which brings about the result without an intervention of any force started and working actively from a new and independent source. The determination of real cost depends upon the working and the practice of insurance circumstances to losses. A loss may not be occasioned merely by one event. There may be a concurrent causes or chain of causes. They may occur in a sequence or in broken chain. Sometimes, certain causes are expected by, for example, expected by the insurance contract, and the insurer is not liable for the accepted peril. The efficient cause of a loss is called the proximate cause of the loss. I'll repeat. The efficient cause of a loss is called the proximate cause of the loss. For the policy to cover the loss must have an insured peril as the proximate cause of the loss, or also the insured peril must occur in the chain of causation that links the proximate cause with the loss. The proximate cause is not necessarily the cause that was nearest to the damage, either in time or in place, but is rather the cause that was actually responsible for loss. So, how do you determine the proximate cause? If there is a single cause of the loss, the cause will be the proximate cause, and the further, if the peril or cause or loss was insured, insurer will have to identify the loss. If there are concurrent causes, the insured perils and expected perils have to be segregated. The concurrent causes may be first and second, you take another one. Then, if the causes occurred in the form of chain, they have to be observed very seriously. Whether it's a happen, there is a broken chain or unbroken chain. So all these things we need to seriously observe. So by observing seriously, the proximate cause can be determined. And the last but one is assignment or transfer of interest. It is necessary to distinguish between the assignment of subject matter of insurance, the policy, and the policy money when payable. There are 3 points here. Point A is the subject matter of the insurance. Point B is the policy, and the point C is the policy money when payable. So it is necessary to distinguish between the assignment of subject matter of insurance, the policy, and the policy money when payable. These 3 points. So marine and life policies can be freely assigned, but assignment under fire and accident policies are not valid without the prior consent of the insurers, except changes of interest by will or operation of law. Moreover, assignment under the fire and accident policies must be made before the insured parts with his interest. Once he has lost the interest, the policy is void and cannot be assigned. The life policies can be assigned whether the assignee has an insurable interest or not. Life policies are frequently charged, assigned, or otherwise dealt with for their valuable securities. A marine policy is freely assignable unless it contains terms expressly prohibited prohibiting assignment, and it will be assigned either before or after loss. A marine policy may be assigned by endorsement thereon or in other customary manner. In practice, a marine cargo policy is frequently endorsed in blank and becomes, in effect, a quasi negotiable instrument. Hence, it will be appreciated, adds considerably to the convenience of mercantile transactions, as the policy can be negotiated through a bank along with the other document of title. Assignment in fire insurance cannot be recognized without prior consent of the insurer. The change of interest in the fire policies, unless by will or operation of law, are not valid unless and until the consent of the insurer has been given. The fire policies are not in the nature of assignment nor intended to be assigned from one person to another person without the consent of the insurer. Assignment in fire insurance constitutes a new contract. Now come to the last point, that is return of premium. Ordinarily, the premium once paid cannot be refunded. However, in few cases, refund is also allowed. By agreement to the policy, the issued may pay full premium while effecting the insurance, but it may be agreed to return it wholly or partly in the happening of certain events. For example, special packing may reduce the risk. What are the reasons of equity? Now, for reasons of equity, number one is non-attachment of risk, where the subject matter insured or part thereof has never then imperiled. For example, term insurance with the returnable premium, where the premium is returned to the policyholder if death does not occur during the period of insurance. So generally, term insurance amount will not be returned back. Undeclared balance of in a policy. The policy may be cancelled and premium may be returned for short interest allowed, provided there was no further interest in the policy. So this is possible only in case of undeclared balance of on open policy. Next one is payment of premium is apportionable. The apportionment part of the consideration is refundable when a part of the policy interest is not involved. For example, insurance may be taken for a voyage in stages, each stage being rated separately. In such a case, if some stages are not completed, the premium relating to it definitely incomplete the stage and it is returnable. And the fourth case is where the insured has no insurable interest throughout the currency of the risk. The premium is returnable provided the policy was not attached by way of wagering. And the fifth case is unreasonably delay in commencing the voyage, VOYAGE, may also entitle the insurer to cancel the insurance by returning the premium. And the last case is where the assured has overinsured under an unvalued policy, a proportionate part of the premium is returnable. Now let us have a look on the last concept called over insurance by double insurance. Over insurance by double insurance. It is not mentioned in my PPT. If there is a over insurance by double insurance, a proportionate part of the several premium is returnable provided that if the policies are taken at different times and any earlier policy has at any time borne the entire risk or if the claim has been paid. On the policy in respect of the foil insured, FOIL, foil insured, thereby no premium is returnable in respect of that policy, and when double insurance is affected knowingly by the assured, no premium is returnable. So with this, I have completed essential elements of insurance contract. Main point A is general, and the point B is a special. So elements of special contract relating to insurance also over. Okay. So thank you very much.